It was a Tuesday, I think. Hard to keep track when the sky goes from hazy gray to a permanent, blood-tinged dusk. I was at the downtown farmer's market, just grabbing some bread, when it started. Not like in the movies, with a sudden scream. It was more, a ripple. A confusion. People started bumping into each other, then stumbling. The first one I saw bite someone, it wasn't even trying to be subtle. Just a raw, animalistic lunge. My first thought, honestly, was that it was some kind of bad drug or maybe a new kind of riot. But then I saw him. Mr. Henderson, the grumpy old man who always complained about the price of tomatoes. He was gnawing on Mrs. Gable's arm like it was a Thanksgiving turkey. Her screams, they were thin and reedy at first, then just, gurgles. And his eyes, man, they weren't his eyes anymore. They were milky, unfocused, but burning with this, hunger. It wasn't just rage, it was primal, absolute. Then it was chaos. The crowd turned on itself. It was like a contagion, but faster, dirtier. People shoving, falling, and then the gnashing. The tearing. I remember seeing a woman, she had this beautiful floral dress, and she was just, being ripped apart by a pack. Their faces were contorted, drooling, their movements jerky, unnatural. It didn't make sense. My brain just couldn't process it. It was like watching a nature documentary on fast forward, but the predators were people I'd bought coffee from just that morning. I ran. Just pure, blind panic. I didn't know where I was going, just away from the noise, away from the smell. That metallic, coppery smell of blood mixed with something, rotten. I ended up in an abandoned bookstore, barricading myself in a back office. The silence outside was worse, punctuated by occasional, distant shrieks. I could hear shuffling, scraping, that horrible wet sound of something being dragged. Every creak of the building made my heart jump into my throat. I spent hours just staring at the door, waiting for it to burst open. The worst part wasn't just seeing it, it was the knowing. Knowing that everyone you ever knew could be one of them now. That friendly smile could be the last thing you see before your flesh is torn from your bones. The paranoia set in quick. I saw a shadow move outside the grimy window and nearly had a heart attack. Was it one of them? Or just a stray dog? Or maybe, someone else, someone who hadn't succumbed yet, but was hiding, watching. This whole thing, it's a twisted game of hide-and-seek with death, and the seeker never tires. So, here I am, holed up with dwindling supplies, listening to the world die outside. If anyone ever finds this, my voice, my story, remember me. Remember what happened. And if you're out there, surviving, tell me, what would you do if you saw someone you loved turn into one of them? Would you fight? Would you run? I don't know if I have the strength to face that. Anyway, if this reaches anyone, please hit that like button and subscribe. It's probably my last chance to get this out. Just, hit it. The humming started again, low and deep, vibrating through the soles of my boots. It was coming from the west, the direction of the abandoned town. I'd hoped I was far enough away, that the silence would hold, but it never did for long. I scanned the horizon, the pale, washed-out sky offering no comfort. Just endless, dusty plains and the skeletal remains of buildings. I gripped the crowbar tighter. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all I had. Every creak of metal, every whisper of wind, set my teeth on edge. I hadn't seen any of them for 3 days, not since I'd fled the last settlement. The hunger was a dull ache, a constant companion, but it was the fear that really wore me down. The fear of the noise, of the smell, of the vacant, shuffling movement. The humming intensified. It was a chorus now, a droning symphony of unease. I could hear shuffling, too, the unmistakable drag of feet on dry earth. They were closer. Much closer. I scrambled up the side of a crumbling overpass, the concrete showering down around me. From my new vantage point, I could see them. A dozen, maybe more, silhouetted against the setting sun. They were moving with that jerky, unnatural gait, heads lolling, arms hanging limp. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to control my breathing, to make myself small, invisible. But they were drawn to sound, to movement. One of them stopped, its head tilting as if it could sense me, even from this distance. Then, it turned, its vacant eyes seeming to fix on my position. The humming seemed to grow louder, more directed, as if it were a siren call, specifically for me. Panic seized me. I couldn't stay here. I slid down the other side of the overpass, landing hard on the rough ground. The humming was a tangible thing now, pressing in on me. I broke into a run, not caring about the noise, about the dust I kicked up. My lungs burned, my legs felt like lead, but I ran. Behind me, the shuffling grew faster, closer. The humming seemed to be right on my heels. I risked a glance over my shoulder. They were gaining. And more were appearing from the east, drawn by the commotion. The plains were no longer empty. They were filling up. I had to find shelter, and fast. The old, half-collapsed gas station up ahead was my only hope. I scrambled towards the dilapidated gas station, my eyes scanning for any sign of entry. The sliding doors were jammed, splintered wood and rusted metal a testament to time and neglect. A broken window offered a potential, if dangerous, way in. I didn't hesitate. Ignoring the jagged shards of glass, I dove through, tearing my shirt and scraping my arm, but I was inside. The air was thick with the smell of old oil and decay. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced the grimy windows. I could hear them now, a chorus of shuffling feet and that unsettling hum, right outside. They were trying the doors. I needed to find a better hiding spot, something more secure. Behind the counter, a rickety metal door led down into what looked like a storage area. It was dark, and the hinges groaned in protest as I pulled it open, but it was my only option. I dropped inside, pulling the door shut behind me. The darkness was absolute, and the smell of damp earth and something vaguely metallic filled my nostrils. I could hear them still, their movements echoing from above, a relentless, unnerving sound. They were searching, their guttural hum a constant reminder of their presence. I pressed myself against a cold, damp wall, trying to control my ragged breathing. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The sounds from above shifted, becoming more agitated, as if they were frustrated by my disappearance. Then, a new sound began, a scraping against the concrete floor, directly above the door. They were trying to get in. Panic flared, hot and suffocating. I looked around wildly, my eyes adjusting slightly to the gloom. Piles of discarded items, faded crates, and what looked like old tires offered scant cover. I shoved aside a stack of dusty newspapers and squeezed myself into a narrow gap between two crumbling shelves, pulling a tattered tarp over myself. The scraping intensified, and with a sudden, violent wrench, the metal door buckled inwards. A shadow fell across the opening, followed by the familiar, disturbing hum. They were inside. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. I heard them shuffling, their movements clumsy yet purposeful. One of them seemed to pause directly above my hiding spot. I held my breath, every muscle tensed, praying they wouldn't find me. The hum seemed to vibrate through the floor, a disorienting, chilling sensation. Then, after what felt like an hour, the sounds began to recede. The scraping and shuffling moved away, back towards the main part of the building, then outwards. I waited, straining my ears, until the only sound was the faint whisper of wind through the broken window. Cautiously, I peeked out from under the tarp. The metal door was a mangled wreck, but they were gone. For now. I let out a shaky breath, the adrenaline slowly draining from my body, leaving behind a profound exhaustion and a gnawing fear. I was safe, for this moment, but I knew this wasn't over. The plains were no longer empty, and the old gas station, my temporary refuge, felt more like a trap than a haven. I'm crammed in the back of this rat-infested van, the metal groaning with every bump. My name's Leo, and honestly, I don't even know why I'm writing this down. Maybe it's just to feel like I'm still a person, you know. Not just some scared animal scuttling around. I was on the road, heading out of the city for a weekend fishing trip. Normal stuff. Then the sirens started. Not just a few, but a whole orchestra of panic. I pulled over, saw people running, screaming. And then I saw it. Right there, in the middle of what used to be Elm Street, a guy was tearing into another guy. It wasn't just biting, it was a primal, savage ripping. The victim, he looked like he was still trying to get away, even with half his face gone. And the attacker? His eyes were milky white, his jaw slack, moving with a jerky, unnatural rhythm. Then the victim, he just stopped moving. And a second later, he was twitching, starting to push himself up, his own face a mess, but with that same vacant stare. That's when the screaming really started. Absolute, unadulterated terror. I slammed the gas, tires screeching. Cars were crashing everywhere. People were clawing at each other, some already changed. It was chaos. Pure, unfiltered hell. I ended up here, in this godforsaken town called Oakhaven, hiding in this van because the main street looked like a slaughterhouse. The bakery on the corner, usually so cheerful, had its front window smashed, and through the grime, I could see shapes. Lurching, shuffling shapes. The smell, oh God, the smell. It's like rotten meat and something metallic, something that sticks in your throat. I haven't seen anyone normal since I got here. Just them. And the silence, when they're not moaning or tearing into something, is almost worse. It's heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. I tried to find food in a convenience store, but it was already ransacked. Found a half-eaten can of beans, ate it cold. My stomach still churns. Every shadow makes me jump. Every creak of the van makes my heart pound. I'm so alone. The worst part is, I don't even know who to trust anymore. Saw a woman yesterday, seemed scared, just like me. I almost called out to her, but then I saw the way her eyes kept darting, that frantic look. It was the same look I'd seen on the others. That vacant hunger. I stayed hidden. It's better to be alone than to be with them. Or worse, to be the reason someone else is alone. The engine sputtered again, a hacking cough that echoed the terror in my chest. I slammed my hand on the dashboard, a futile attempt to force it into submission. The sun was starting to dip, painting the desolate landscape in shades of orange and purple, beautiful but terrifying. It meant night was coming, and night was when they were most active. The woods on either side of the road seemed to press in, dense and alive with unseen things. I'd been driving for hours, aimlessly, just trying to put as much distance between me and that last town as possible. Every turn, every bend in the road, I expected to see them. A figure shambling out from behind a tree, or worse, a horde spilling out onto the asphalt. My fuel gauge was a constant, gnawing worry. It was hovering just above empty, a ticking clock that could spell my doom. A flicker of movement caught my eye, far off to the side. I instinctively swerved, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. It was just a deer, its eyes wide with fear, bolting into the undergrowth. But the adrenaline surge was immediate, a jolt of pure panic. I could have sworn, for a split second, that it wasn't just a deer. There was something distorted about its shape, something wrong. I pulled over onto the shoulder, the tires crunching on loose gravel. My breathing was ragged. I needed to think, to conserve fuel, to find a safe place to wait out the night. But where was safe? Every abandoned building, every darkened alley, felt like a trap. The last town had been full of shadows that moved, of whispers that weren't human. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was gaunt, my eyes hollow. I barely recognized myself. The fear was a constant companion, a cold weight in my gut. It had stripped away everything else, leaving only the primal need to survive. I touched my face, feeling the stubble, the grime. It felt like a lifetime since I'd felt clean, since I'd felt anything other than this consuming dread. I considered trying to find a place to hide the van, to make my way on foot. But the thought of being exposed, of being out in the open with nothing but my own 2 feet, was almost worse. The van, as unreliable as it was, offered a semblance of protection. A metal shell against the horrors outside. The silence outside the van was oppressive. The only sounds were the faint hum of the engine and the erratic thumping of my own heart. I strained my ears, listening for any telltale shuffling, any guttural moan. Nothing. Yet. The woods remained silent, watchful. It was a silence that promised something far worse than noise. A silence that suggested they were already here, just waiting. Waiting for me to step out, or for the van to finally give up its ghost. I could feel their presence, a prickling on the back of my neck, a sense of being observed by countless unseen eyes. The darkness was a shroud, and I was trapped beneath it. The van sputtered again, a death rattle this time. It wasn't going to make it. I knew it, and whoever was out there in the woods knew it too. That's why the silence felt so heavy, like they were holding their breath, anticipating the moment the engine finally died. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating quiet. I scanned the treeline again, my eyes straining against the oppressive dark. Nothing. Just shadows playing tricks, or maybe they were better at hiding than I gave them credit for. The air grew colder, or maybe that was just me, a chill seeping into my bones from the sheer dread. I needed a plan, and I needed one fast, before the last bit of life left this metal box and I was completely exposed. I fumbled with the glove compartment, hoping for anything, a flare gun, a forgotten tire iron, anything that could give me a fighting chance. All I found was a crumpled map, an empty pack of gum, and a broken flashlight. Useless. The engine gave one final, pathetic cough and then went completely silent. The quiet that followed was deafening. My breath hitched in my throat. Now they knew for sure. They knew I was alone, stranded, and vulnerable. I stayed perfectly still, listening. The woods seemed to press in on me, the trees like silent sentinels, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. A twig snapped in the distance. Then another, closer this time. I had to move. Staying in the van was a death sentence. My hands were slick with sweat as I reached for the door handle, my mind racing through possibilities. Could I outrun them? Likely not. Could I hide? Maybe, but they were already here, already watching. I took a deep breath, trying to push down the rising panic. The immediate threat was the unknown, the unseen. I needed to see them, to at least know what I was up against. I pushed the door open slowly, the creak echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. The night air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I slipped out of the van, crouching low, my eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Every rustle of leaves, every distant owl hoot, sounded like a pursuer. I moved with agonizing slowness, my senses on high alert. I had no weapon, no plan, just the desperate instinct to survive. I hugged the edge of the treeline, using the dense undergrowth for cover, inching my way away from the dead van. The silence had been broken now, replaced by the pounding of my own blood in my ears. Another twig snapped, this time directly to my left. I froze, my muscles tensing, ready to bolt. Then, I saw it. A flicker of movement in the periphery, a shape detaching itself from the deeper darkness. It was too far to make out details, but it was definitely there. My heart leaped into my throat. I didn't wait to see more. I turned and ran, pushing through the brush, branches whipping at my face. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. The sounds behind me changed, a soft rustling escalating into the unmistakable rhythm of pursuit. They were coming. And the woods, which had seemed merely watchful before, now felt like an active participant, a maze designed to trap me. Thank you for joining me on this journey. As we close this chapter, I want to impress upon you the profound importance of preparedness. The scenarios we've explored, while fictional, are rooted in the very real possibility of unexpected and devastating events. Remember the chilling realization of the unknown presence, the primal urge to flee, and the swift transition from a passive observer to an active participant in a desperate struggle for survival. The rustling in the undergrowth, the accelerating pace, these are not mere sounds, but indicators of a world that can shift from benign to hostile in an instant. Consider the sheer vulnerability we felt, isolated and thrust into a situation demanding immediate and unthinking action. My own flight through the dense woods, the branches lashing out like sentient tendrils, underscored the terrifying reality of being hunted. The forest, once a source of quiet contemplation, became a hostile entity, its shadows and twists transforming into a labyrinth of dread. This is why having a plan, a basic understanding of how to navigate and evade, is so critical. Even a simple skill, like knowing how to move quietly through difficult terrain or understanding the natural resources around you, can be the difference between life and a grim alternative. One crucial aspect of surviving such ordeals is maintaining a level head. Panic is a formidable enemy, often incapacitating us far more effectively than any external threat. When faced with overwhelming fear, the instinct to freeze or make rash decisions can be fatal. However, by consciously focusing on breathing, assessing the immediate surroundings, and breaking down the overwhelming problem into smaller, manageable steps, we can reclaim a semblance of control. Think about it, in that moment of desperate flight, a clear mind could have analyzed the terrain for better escape routes or identified potential hiding places, rather than simply running blindly. Always have a bug-out bag packed and ready. It doesn't need to be elaborate, but it should contain essentials like water, non-perishable food, a first aid kit, a multi-tool, and a reliable way to start a fire. This simple preparation can drastically increase your chances of enduring the initial shock of a crisis. As we part ways for now, I encourage you to reflect on these narratives. Please consider subscribing to this channel for more stories and practical advice. And more importantly, share your thoughts and any survival tips you might have in the comments below. Your engagement not only helps this community grow but also spreads vital knowledge. Stay safe, stay prepared, and never underestimate the power of remaining calm.